Well, welcome to the Unstoppable Freedom Podcast. I'm Jimmy Page, and this is part 2 in a 2-part series on the topic of gun rights, gun ownership, and gun safety. And our guest is Sheriff Darren Weekly of Douglas County, Colorado. You are in for a treat. This is a super practical episode. You're not going to want to miss this. Here we go. All right. Well, that might be a great chance to pivot a little bit. School safety, keeping kids safe in schools, right? Obviously, Colorado is an interesting state because my understanding is we have the ability to train and arm teachers and administrators. They can request it. They can get that type of training. Obviously, the police response time to a problem at a school in Colorado, we have a history of this now. You're not going to be able to get there right away. Help us understand the best ways to keep our kids safe at school.
You know, make sure to have those difficult discussions with your kids. Douglas County, we are very blessed because we have one of the most robust school resource officer programs in the state of Colorado, if not the entire country. We have a great relationship with the Douglas County School District. I know the Douglas County School District takes safety very seriously. I was actually just recently in a local elementary school a couple of days ago, and the school was locked down. And they are being very cautious. Even the classroom that I was going into, the classroom door is now locked, which is a good thing because it wasn't that long ago. Doors were being left open and stuff like that. So I think the schools are being much more aware of that. Yeah. Now, my daughter recently graduated from high school a couple of years ago. And what I had told her is, if you hear gunshots, get out. Get out. Now, obviously, it depends on where you're at in that school. You know, get away from wherever it is. Whether you have to throw a chair through a window, I don't care. Yeah. Get out. And so parents need to have that conversation with their kids. The school district has, again, an excellent safety protocol. I am an advocate for arming teachers, provided they have the proper training. And we do have a couple of schools in Douglas County, private schools, that have chosen to go that route. And I support that as the sheriff. Ultimately, it's not my decision whether a school does that or not. But I often give people the example of the STEM school shooting. You know, John Castillo is a friend, certainly. But in the STEM school shooting, I was in a staff meeting, and one of our employees came in and said, we have an active shooter at one of the schools. Well, my daughter attended a high school in Douglas County at that time. And I'm like, what school? Because you immediately think it's your child. It's your child's school. And they didn't know what school yet. This had just happened. So within a few moments. And so I didn't know what school it was for about probably 15 seconds.
Wow.
In that 15 seconds, as a parent, you don't care who is there to defend your child with a firearm as long as there's somebody there to do it. You don't care if it's the teacher or it's administrator or it's the SRO. You just want your child to come home alive.
Yes.
We were, my agency was inside of the STEM school shooting from the time of the initial call to the time that the situation was resolved. And we had people, officers in that building, was only a couple of minutes.
Wow.
It was still a couple of minutes too late.
Yes.
And so the Nashville shooting recently, I don't know if you saw the body cam footage of the Nashville shooting. Those cops that responded, textbook, right?
Yes.
Textbook. They responded emergent. They got on scene. They went in. They did not delay, and they neutralized the shooter. 6 people were still killed inside that school, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people will say, well, how can you expect our teachers who do so much and get paid so little, how can you expect our teachers to do one more thing and to be responsible for carrying a firearm? Well, first of all, nobody's saying that teachers that don't want to carry should have to carry. I mean, that's not in the equation at all. It's also higher level training. But what I also say is, well, how can you expect those teachers to be human shields to those children? They're going to protect those kids. the world that we live in is much dangerous than the world that you and I lived in when we were growing up. When you and I were in school, I'm guessing we're about the same age. When
Yep.
you and I were in school, we didn't worry about getting shot at school.
Never.
Kids today worry about getting shot at school.
Yes.
That's where our society has deteriorated to. So I'm an
Yes.
advocate for armed teachers, but it's from my perspective, it's not just some teacher with a concealed weapons permit. It's got to be
Yeah.
a higher level of training.
Yes.
I think the staff should be selected.
Yeah.
Maybe they go through an interview process. We have a lot of teachers out there that are former military, former law enforcement, have a higher skill set. And if they're willing to take that on, then God bless them. The kids should never know who the armed teacher is. That defeats the whole purpose. So
I love that.
It's the world that we live in now.
Yeah, it's funny. My father was a superintendent of schools when I was growing up, and these were never issues. This was in upstate New York, interestingly enough. So my hometown, that school district now is one of the most unsafe school districts in all of New York, especially Western New York, which is a stunner because when my dad was there, the worst thing he would have was a kid would bring a knife to school, or worse yet, a parent would who was meeting with him. That's a story for another day. But back then, we had no worry, no care about being harmed. And here's the thing. Like, I love the fact that you're for arming teachers or administrators who want to be armed and who are willing to go through that intensive training, right? Because they have to be put under pressure to be able to get used to responding under pressure. Because, man, everything happens. You get a little adrenaline going. Your hands don't work the way they're supposed to. You're not loading that gun the same way. So you have to be put under stressful training situations so that you can be more effective at school. But I've never heard someone say, hey, you don't want, how can we put this responsibility on a teacher? Well, wait a minute. We're going to ask them to be a human shield in the other event. Wow. I've never heard that comparison made. And for me, that's game over. Yep. Let's prepare them. Let's get them prepared and let's get them trained.
And I honestly think that perpetrators that are plotting to do these things and go into schools and kill children and kill staff members, I think they might think twice if they think somebody's going to shoot back at them immediately.
Yes. In fact, the Tennessee shooter said as much in their writings. They wrote about that these were gun-free zones, that there was not going to be any resistance. And, you saw what happened in Texas. To contrast Tennessee and Texas, holy smokes. The law enforcement in Tennessee was unbelievable, but the law enforcement in Texas, who had just been trained, was abysmal. Negligent.
Yeah, and I don't know how to explain that. I can't tell you. If you go to work every day and you put a badge on, you're expected that you are going to be that. You're going to be that thin blue line to save lives. And I can't imagine. I can't imagine I can tell you none of my commanders or anybody that works for me, they'd be going into that school without hesitation because that's what we signed up for.
That's right.
God help our law enforcement, God protect them, but that's what we signed up for, is to save lives. And for every second that you're not in that building engaging, lives could be lost.
Yeah. Tell us what can parents do? You talked about having honest conversations with your kids about circumstances that could happen in school and giving them some, tactical things to do, some practical things to do and to look for. What can parents do to prepare and protect their kids? I know a lot of parents right now are inserting body armor of some sort into backpacks. There's some great products out there. What can parents do so that they're not completely dependent upon the school, so that their kids are aware of what they might have to do?
Make sure I would tell parents to be engaged in their school board meetings. Make sure that they're knowing what's going on in the school districts, what the safety policies are, how the school is going to respond in the event of either a lockdown, lockout, or some sort of a major event. There are a lot of products out there that you mentioned where it's bullet resistant, either material in backpacks or things like that. But just your kids need to know what the expectation. That bad thing happens, they're gonna revert back to what they've been told in school and what their parents have told them to do. And so just make sure, that's the best advice that I can give, is just to make sure that your kids have a plan of how they're going to react. if something horrific transpires inside that school.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Hey, so let's switch gears a little bit to home security. I think obviously there's more home break-ins. There's a lot of risk there. I'll never forget when I first started getting serious about protecting my family, my home. I did a little bit of an audit on the vulnerabilities of my home. Do you coach families to take a look at where they live and look at potential vulnerabilities and then try to harden those targets?
Yeah, and our community relations unit will do that at no charge. So a business can call us, a resident can call us, and we'll come out and we'll do a site security survey of your home. I always advocate for cameras. They're so cheap now and they're wireless. And so it takes nothing to put some cameras up around your home that are motion censored. So if you're at work, when a lot of burglaries occur during the daytime because people aren't home, or late at night to protect your family, light up the exterior of your house with motion sensing cameras. So if somebody comes into your backyard or on the side of the house, it lights up. Just simple things like that. Buy an alarm sign. Alarms are great, and I certainly advocate for people to have an alarm. But even the sign, of the alarm company in front of your house or behind your house, the burglar is going to move on to the next easier target. So even just having the sign in your yard is a benefit. But make sure those doors and windows are locked. Douglas County in particular is low-hanging fruit. It's a very affluent community, beautiful homes, beautiful cars, but crime does happen down here. It doesn't stop at the county line road. So, we've had it happen where people live in $1 million homes and they drive $100,000 cars and they'll leave the keys in the cars with the garage door open. And so you've got to take those steps because criminals coming down here and they'll know this is where the good stuff is.
Interesting. Yeah, like you can't take it for granted that because you live in a good neighborhood or a safe neighborhood that you're not going to have crime. Let's talk a little bit about church security. Obviously, the world is kind of coming unglued in some ways. We've got conflict all around the world. We've got now conflict in Israel and Palestine, and there's a whole bunch of problems. But what we're seeing, of course, is an increase in protests around America that we've never seen before in cities all across the country. I'm imagining it's not too far from home at this point. How do we prepare for, let's say we're going out to dinner, how do we prepare for some kind of a mob situation, if you will, or some kind of a protest situation that could happen around us and turn confrontational or even violent? What do we do?
People just have to be aware of what's going on in any particular neighborhood. When the riots were taking place in the city of Denver in 2020, the Douglas County Sheriff's Office sent resources to go supplement the city and county of Denver. During that time frame, I wouldn't have gone down to the city of Denver because you're just asking for trouble. So stay away from that area because, as we saw, there was mobs of people stopping every average everyday citizen, on Broadway near the Capitol, and then all of a sudden you're just trying to get home, and all of a sudden you're caught up in the middle of something. And so be aware of your surroundings, be aware of what's going on, remove yourself from the situation if you have the ability to do so. And I'm not just saying that of an average citizen. I'd say that, as a law enforcement officer, try to avoid a situation if it's possible to do so. Just people need to be aware. And again, I support law-abiding citizens carrying weapons.
Yep. Let's talk a little bit about church security. Following the Roe v. Wade decision being overturned, there was a ton of increase on attacks on pregnancy resource centers, and in particular on Catholic churches. Anybody that is openly opposed to abortion or pro-life, these were targets. I attend church every Sunday. We have a security team. How important is it for churches to be aware of the fact that they're inviting the public in, that people are at risk, and that they really need to have a plan?
Churches bring out the best in people, and sometimes they bring out the worst in people. With the state of the world, as you mentioned, as it is today, we're on heightened alert for all of our churches. There has been no credible threat of any houses of worship, but we're on high alert because you never know. For many years, I have been part of the church security network within Douglas County. And so these are citizens just like yourself that have chosen to be part of the church security team who, concealed weapons holders. Many of them have much higher level training to protect that church, which the sheriff's office and local law enforcement fully support. Because you never know when some individual who is deranged, maybe mentally ill, and whatever their agenda is, they may want to come in and take as many lives as possible. And so I will tell you that the churches are very aware of their security issues. That is why many of them have started church security networks. Many of them contract with law enforcement for off-duty cops to be out there. So if you see a cop work in your church, most likely they're contracted, they're on their time off, and they're guarding that particular institution during that time. But due to everything that's happened in the world, that churches are very keenly aware, much more so than I think that their parishioners are aware of. But churches do a much better job than they have in years past as far as protecting themselves and protecting their members.
That's good. And I know there's a lot of concerns around synagogues now. I mean, there's just things are kind of coming unglued. And I think the more it kind of is the overall theme, the more aware you are, the more aware you are of where you're going and the surroundings, I think the more prepared you'll be to avoid some of these situations.
And our churches in Douglas County, if they're part of the church security network, they actually share intelligence information as far as suspicious persons or people that are coming into the church and causing disruptions and things like that. So all of the churches in the area are aware of these individuals. So it's quite the network at this point. And it's much needed. We've had that in place for several years now.
That's amazing. It makes me want to explore whether we've got a church security network in our county up here. And, and I think this is good information for people all around the country who are listening, saying, hey, I wonder if my church is part of a church security network. And maybe that's a good idea.
It's really easy to start up, and a lot of the chat apps that are out there now, whether it's, WhatsApp or any of the other platforms, you can get with your local law enforcement. A citizen, our church security network was actually formed by a citizen. And so he got with me, and I'm like, oh, yes, this is long overdue. We need to get this started up. But you can do it. It's inexpensive. It also enables law enforcement to be able to put out, publicly available intelligence information if there's a concern. And so, again, it's cheap and it's easy to do, and it helps keep everyone informed.
I love that. Just like we would want we have our schools connected to local law enforcement, we would want the same thing for our churches. I love that idea of sharing intelligence and sharing, what's actually happening on the ground right now might be able to prevent a bigger problem. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about private businesses that are increasingly restricting concealed carry citizens. I can't go into a local Whole Foods or Trader Joe's, or, they've got these postings. How can everyday citizens, number one, follow all the laws and restrictions? But number two, how can we keep ourselves protected and within the law as we're operating in our local communities?
The business, if it's private property, they do have the ability to make whatever rules they choose to make on their property. Citizens also have the right to take their business elsewhere or to get a hold of management or the owner of the company and express their feelings about why this is wrong. If you think a criminal looks at a gun-free zone sign and think, okay, well, I can't come in here and kill a bunch of people, or I can't rob this place, it has a gun-free zone sticker. It's not reality, and it's ridiculous. Right. And so, I won't, I'm law enforcement, so I'm exempt from all that. But, I would take my business elsewhere because I just don't get the rationale if they think that their signs are going to make a difference. Criminals don't obey gun laws, period.
No.
Nor do they obey somebody's private property sign.
Right. Exactly. Well, let's talk a little bit about gun laws and the increasingly invasive laws that we're experiencing. I mean, even in Colorado, this past legislative season, it was a tough season, but we pushed back and won a number of things and kept our freedoms in many ways. But Colorado laws, like laws all across the country, are making it increasingly difficult for residents to protect themselves and to protect their families. Why is the term, I'll get specific, why is the term assault rifle used in the debate, and what the heck are we talking about?
Nobody can really define what an assault rifle is. I think it's a rifle that looks scary to people that don't know how to use a rifle. I was one of the 5 sheriffs in the state of Colorado. There's 64 sheriffs. I was one of the 5 that testified against the assault weapons ban in Colorado. And so, the AR-15 platform rifle is a commonly owned weapon throughout the United States. And so the vast majority of the citizens that own these rifles, they do it in a law-abiding fashion. Whether it's whatever they choose to use that weapon for, whether it's to hunt or to protect their family or for sport or whatever they choose to do with that weapon, they're doing it appropriately. There is no defined definition for an assault weapon. And so it's just. I'm not convinced that they won't try it again during the next legislative session and maybe tweak some of the language. We'll see and fight that battle if we need to. But more and more, we are seeing legislators that you and I have both been through LPR, and one of the things that Shari liked to say is, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so when you see the amount of liberties that have been taken away from our citizens over the decades compared to where we're at now, it's slowly being chipped away. And so citizens need to be mindful of that, whether you're talking legislation or you're talking regulations within government and things like that. Now, I'm not an anti-government people. I mean, I'm law enforcement, part of the government. I'm part of the most important part of the government, which is public safety. So I'm not an anti-government, individual, but government has a specific role. And so we need to ensure that our citizens, we the people, as right behind you there, are active in government. Elections have consequences. Yeah.
I was just thinking, I'm probably more anti-government than you are, but not the law enforcement side. But this whole podcast is going to get flagged now. Thank you. Appreciate that. So one of the laws that is particularly troublesome to me are these red flag laws, right? Where we're essentially telling people to turn in their neighbors, their friends, their coworkers. Why is this such a bad idea?
I testified against the expansion of red flag. So now let's say, just hypothetically, let's say a couple goes through marriage counseling, right? And the marriage counselor thinks that that individual, one of the individuals, shouldn't have a gun. They can petition directly for a red flag. That is just one example. All these medical records and mental health records can now be turned over to law enforcement. Wow. When the initial red flag was passed, I don't think the people that are anti-gun got the reaction that they were hoping for, because it's frankly not been used a lot within Colorado. And, Douglas County, since the law was enacted, the sheriff's office has only done 4 of these since the original red flag law was enacted, 5 years ago now. And so that we have almost 400,000 citizens. So that gives you an idea. It's not used very often, but the expansion of red flag, it's going to be interesting to see how that transpires. A lot of people don't understand the process. So essentially an affidavit must be written. It has to go to a judge. The judge has to either, support and sign off on it or not. But the expansion is where I think we're going to run into a lot of problems. I see an isolated incidents, and I'm just being honest with you, where we have an extremely mentally ill individual that has not yet committed a crime, but we have overwhelming evidence to show that the person's going to kill somebody, and they're likely to do so. The example that I give people, and again, I want to say that as a Second Amendment defender, which I am, I'm not going to go and move forward on one of these things unless I think lives are going to be lost. And what I tell people out in the public that question that, I say, I want you to imagine the person that is closest to you in your life, somebody that you hold dear, whether it's your child, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your parent, somebody that you absolutely, you love, right, and would give your own life for. Now, I want you to imagine that person has been murdered in some sort of mass shooting event. And you later found out that the sheriff or the police chiefs can do these as well. You later found out that the sheriff or police chief knew that the individual that killed your loved one was dangerous, was mentally ill, was armed, and they were going to murder people. And that sheriff or chief did absolutely nothing to save your loved one's life. Imagine the rage that you would feel for that. So in a very limited window, I see where there could be a place for red flag. Very limited. But overall, for the gun grab, or, hey, I think my neighbor might be dangerous, or my ex-boyfriend, or my ex-spouse, you better have a lot of information that we can corroborate to show that for us to be able to move forward to a judge. These are approved much the same way that an arrest warrant or a search warrant is approved. It's not like, hey, I'm the sheriff and I'm just going to make a decision. I'm going to go sign off on one of these. So it has to go through a process. But again, the reason that I testified against the expansion of red flag is a lot of the issues that we have the ability to move forward on one of these, we already had them. The district attorney always had the ability to go and get one of these. They chose not to, but they added that in there. Teachers now have the ability to petition for a red flag. So your child's teacher now has the ability to petition directly for a red flag. Now, it still has to go through the court process. The judges do not do these very frequently at all. So
that's good.
Again, I've been in office for 10 months as of, a little over 10 months as of this month. We haven't done one yet because there has not been a case that has been brought to my attention where, okay, lives are going to be lost if we don't do something. We will always go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I think that, everyday citizens respect the idea of identifying people who are a significant risk to the community. I mean, in fact, many of these mass shootings are committed by people that were on the FBI radar, and we did nothing. I mean, that's a whole nother problem that we're facing. We want law enforcement to act upon significant risk, especially as it pertains to mental health and all of that, for sure. The thing that you just mentioned with teachers that's really chilling is these same school districts, maybe not in Douglas County, but in other counties, more liberal counties like Larimer, for example, they're putting out these questionnaires to kids, and they're asking these kids, do your parents own firearms? Do they secure them? They're asking completely inappropriate questions. And of course, you can opt out of those, but only if you're really on it as a parent. And that's where it gets scary, right? Could a teacher take information that a child shared on a questionnaire and use it against law-abiding citizens? That's kind of chilling.
Yeah, that's scary to think about it. I had not heard that. Wow.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap it up, Darren, this has been phenomenally helpful. What are some things that you would recommend to everyday citizens who want to be part of the solution, who want to be vigilant and diligent in this area of self-protection and protecting their families and their community? What are some things that you would tell them to do? Just easy things.
Be engaged in what's going on in your community. If there's opportunity, and I know ammunition is expensive, I get it, but get that higher level of training to defend yourself and to defend your family. You brought up a couple of minutes ago that when you're in a situation that's real life, you don't know how you're going to respond or how you're going to react. If you get that higher level of training, you invest in yourself, you invest in your family to get that higher level of training to give yourself more proficient and give yourself that confidence that you need, then do so. The amount of money that you would spend on a class from a professional that can teach you those skills, that's so valuable compared to anything else that you could be doing. But responsible gun ownership is the key as well. You mentioned that as well. To how do you carry it? How do you store it? How do you do all of those things? But again, you cannot replace good tactical training from a professional.
Yeah, well, Sheriff Darren Weekly, thank you so much, man. This has been super informative. Thanks for all you're doing to serve your community. Thanks for all you're doing to really have a voice for all the communities surrounding you as well, especially at the state legislative level. Grateful for you, man. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you for having me. I'm grateful.
You bet.